This Sunday is the fifth Sunday of Easter in Year B. The second reading this Sunday is again from the first letter of St. John, and the Gospel reading is from the Gospel of John. In the Gospel, Jesus uses a farming or gardening metaphor, describing himself in a way that would have been familiar to the disciples. Jesus says, "I am the vine and you are the branches. A branch cannot bear fruit all by itself, but must remain part of the vine." In his letter to the Galatians, Paul later told the Galatians that the fruits of the Holy Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The first reading this week is again from Acts of the Apostles. When Jesus was still very young, perhaps about 5 years old, a child was born in a town called Tarsus, in the central southern part of what is now Turkey. Tarsus was in the Roman province of Cilicia. The child, a boy, was given the Jewish name Saul. Tarsus is a long way from Jerusalem. It's about 940 kilometers by road. These days, it's about a 12-hour drive. The quickest way is through Damascus, in what is now northwestern Syria. So perhaps not surprisingly, as far as we know, Saul never met Jesus before the crucifixion. The book of Acts of the Apostles records the story of the first person that we know was killed for being a Christian, a man named Stephen. Stephen was appointed to serve the early Christian community by the original 12 apostles, including Matthias, who was chosen to replace Judas. The 12 apostles personally appointed Stephen to serve by laying their hands on him and praying for him. But soon afterwards, false charges were brought against Stephen. He was arrested and brought before the leaders of the Jewish community in Jerusalem. He gave a lengthy and powerful speech in his defense. That speech made the crowd angry. Saul was there that day. He had become a Jewish leader himself. Several members of the angry crowd took off their coats and gave them to Saul to take care of while they killed Stephen. Saul seems to have been inspired, and not in a good way. After he saw the crowd kill Stephen, Saul started going house to house to find and arrest more Christian men and women. Saul may have been the person that early Christians were most afraid of. Sometime later, perhaps a few years, Saul left Jerusalem to travel to Damascus to search for Christians. But on the way there, Saul was suddenly blinded by a light from heaven and heard Jesus speak to him. He could see nothing for 3 days until a disciple in Damascus, Ananias, went to Saul bravely and laid his hands on him. Saul could see again. We never hear the story of what happened on the road to Damascus at a Sunday Mass. This Sunday's first reading is the closest we get. But from that time onwards, Saul became one of the greatest supporters the church has ever had. He started to use his Roman name, Paul. Today we know that Paul wrote at least 7 of the books of the New Testament and is traditionally believed to have written over half